Few weapons in the history of warfare have earned such a fearsome reputation as Germany's 88mm gun. To Allied soldiers and airmen during World War II, the mere mention of the 88 was enough to inspire dread. This legendary artillery piece became synonymous with German military prowess. Combining devastating firepower with remarkable versatility, the gun that began as an anti-aircraft weapon would evolve into one of the most feared instruments of destruction on any battlefield, capable of shredding aircraft at high altitude, punching through the thickest tank armor, and demolishing fortified positions with equal efficiency. Understanding why this particular weapon struck such terror into Allied forces requires examining not just its technical capabilities, but the psychological impact it had on those who faced it in combat. The origins of the German 88 can be traced back to the aftermath of the First World War. When Germany found itself bound by the restrictions of the Treaty of Versailles, forbidden from developing large-caliber weapons on their own soil, the German arms manufacturer Krupp entered into a partnership with the Swedish company Bofors. To circumvent these limitations, this collaboration resulted in the development of the Flugabwehrkanone, literally meaning aircraft defense cannon, which would be abbreviated to the now infamous term Flak. The first working prototypes, designated as the Flak 18, emerged from Swedish factories in 1928. These early models already displayed the characteristics that would make the weapon so formidable. Mounted on a cruciform carriage that could be lowered to provide a stable firing platform, the gun could rotate a full 360 degrees, allowing it to engage targets from any direction. The barrel measured 56 calibers in length, meaning it was 56 times longer than the 88mm diameter of the bore itself. This exceptional length contributed to the weapon's high muzzle velocity, which in turn provided both accuracy and penetrating power. What truly set the 88 apart from its contemporaries was its rate of fire. A well-trained crew could unleash up to 20 rounds per minute, an impressive figure for such a large-caliber weapon. The gun featured an automatic ejection system that expelled spent cartridge cases and simultaneously cocked the firing mechanism, reducing the time between shots. This rapid-fire capability meant that aircraft had less time to evade, and ground targets could be saturated with shells before they could take effective countermeasures. The standard anti-aircraft round was a 17-pound shrapnel grenade designed to climb thousands of feet before detonating. Upon explosion, each shell fragmented into 500 or more jagged metal pieces, creating a lethal cloud of shrapnel that could damage or destroy any aircraft within a 200-yard radius. When Allied bomber crews saw the distinctive black puffs of smoke that marked 88mm airbursts, they knew they were flying through a gauntlet of razor-sharp metal fragments traveling at tremendous velocity. The weapon's baptism of fire came during the Spanish Civil War, where Germany sent military support to Francisco Franco's nationalist forces. The Condor Legion, as the German Expeditionary Force was known, deployed small numbers of the Flak 18 in 1936. It was here that German gunners made a discovery that would fundamentally change how the 88 was employed. While the gun performed admirably in its intended anti-aircraft role, German officers noticed that its high muzzle velocity and flat trajectory made it devastatingly effective against ground targets as well. Republican bunkers and armored vehicles that had proven resistant to conventional artillery were blown apart by direct hits from 88mm shells. The gun could engage targets at ranges where enemy forces could not effectively return fire, and its armor-piercing rounds punched through steel plate that stopped other weapons cold. This versatility was not lost on German military planners, who began to envision expanded roles for the weapon in future conflicts. When the Second World War erupted in September 1939, the Germans had refined the design through successive models. The Flak 36 featured a two-piece barrel that simplified the replacement of worn liners, addressing one of the main limitations of the original Flak 18. The single-piece barrel of the earlier model had a service life of only about 900 rounds before accuracy degraded, necessitating complete barrel replacement in the field. The modular design of the Flak 36 allowed gun crews to swap out just the inner liner, a much simpler and faster operation. The Flak 37 followed soon after, incorporating improved fire control instrumentation that allowed multiple guns to be directed by a single command team. This centralized fire control system was a force multiplier that terrified Allied aircrews. Instead of individual guns firing independently, batteries of 4 or more 88s could concentrate their fire on a single point in the sky. creating an impenetrable wall of exploding metal. The Kommandeur fire control computer, and later the WWII radar, allowed German gunners to calculate lead angles and altitude settings with uncanny precision. Allied bomber formations flying in broad daylight had nowhere to hide from this mathematically calculated destruction. The psychological impact on Allied airmen cannot be overstated. Flying through flak was described by veterans as one of the most terrifying experiences of the war. Unlike fighter attacks, where pilots could at least attempt evasive maneuvers or defensive fire, there was nothing bomber crews could do about flak, except maintain formation and hope the shells burst somewhere else. The black clouds of smoke marked where death had just passed, and crew members knew that an invisible shell might already be arcing toward their position. The randomness of it all was maddening. A plane could fly through intense flak without a scratch, while another might take a direct hit from a single shell and disintegrate instantly. When an 88mm shell scored a direct hit on the thin aluminum skin of a bomber, the results were catastrophic. The high explosive charge would detonate inside the aircraft, shredding everything in its path. Even near misses were dangerous, as the 1/500 metal fragments from each shell could tear through control cables, puncture fuel tanks, destroy engines, or kill crew members. Many airmen returned from missions with horrific wounds from flak fragments, and countless others never returned at all. As the war progressed, German ordnance experts developed an increasingly sophisticated array of ammunition types for the 88. By 1944, the German ammunition catalog listed 19 different rounds for the weapon. 8 were various types of high-explosive shells for anti-aircraft work, 7 were armor-piercing rounds for anti-tank use, and the remainder were solid kinetic energy projectiles. This variety meant that the 88 could be optimized for whatever target it faced. The armor-piercing rounds employed both kinetic and chemical energy principles to defeat tank armor. Some used a delayed percussion fuse that allowed the shell to penetrate the target before detonating inside, where the explosion would be most destructive. Others used hollow charge technology, focusing the explosive force into a superheated jet that burned through armor plate like a cutting torch through butter. The versatility this ammunition variety provided made the 88 a truly universal weapon. It was in the anti-tank role that the 88 truly earned its fearsome reputation among Allied ground forces. During the early campaigns in France and the Low Countries, German commanders discovered that the 88 could engage and destroy even the heaviest French and British tanks at ranges where those tanks could not effectively return fire. The cruciform carriage allowed the gun to be brought into action quickly, and it could even fire in a limited anti-tank mode while still mounted on its wheels. Once the carriage was lowered and the outriggers deployed, a process that took a trained crew less than 2.5 minutes, the 88 became a stable firing platform capable of extraordinary accuracy. British Matilda tanks, which had proven nearly invulnerable to German anti-tank guns of the period, were knocked out with ease by 88mm armor-piercing shells. The psychological impact was immediate and profound. Allied tank crews realized they could be destroyed before they even knew they were under fire. This terror reached its peak in the North African desert, where German forces under Erwin Rommel employed the 88 with devastating effect. Rommel understood the weapon's potential better than most, and he used it with tactical brilliance. German gunners would position their 88s in carefully chosen locations, often hull down behind ridges or concealed in the desert terrain. British tank formations, advancing confidently against what they believed to be retreating German forces, would suddenly find themselves under accurate long-range fire from hidden 88s. Tanks would brew up one after another, their crews often never seeing what hit them. The flat desert terrain allowed the 88 to engage targets at its maximum effective range, while the shimmering heat haze made the guns nearly impossible to spot until they opened fire. British tank commanders developed a healthy respect for the weapon, which they called the 88 with a mixture of fear and grudging admiration. Veterans recalled the distinctive crack of the 88's high-velocity shell, a sound that sent experienced tankers diving for cover. The Germans were so impressed with the 88's anti-tank performance that they decided to mount it on their tanks. This decision led to the development of the Tiger, perhaps the most feared tank of the entire war. The Tiger's 88mm KWK-36 gun shared the same ballistics as the anti-aircraft version, but was modified for tank use with a one-piece barrel, a vertical sliding breech block instead of the horizontal type used on the flak guns, and a double baffle muzzle brake to reduce stress on the tank's structure. The Tiger could carry 92 rounds of ammunition, and crews often found ways to squeeze in additional shells. The combination of the 88's devastating firepower and the Tiger's heavy armor created a weapon system that dominated battlefields from 1942 onwards. Allied tank crews learned to fear the Tiger above all other German vehicles. The 88mm gun could destroy any Allied tank at ranges exceeding 2.0 meters, while Allied tanks had to close to suicidal ranges to have any chance of penetrating the Tiger's frontal armor. The precision and range of the 88 and the Tiger frequently resulted in a one-shot one-kill ratio that was psychologically devastating to Allied armored forces. The terror inspired by the 88 was not limited to its mounted versions. The dedicated anti-tank variant, the Pak-43, appeared in late 1943 and quickly established itself as possibly the finest anti-tank gun of the entire war. With an even longer barrel than earlier versions, the Pak-43 could engage targets at ranges up to 150 meters, and could penetrate the frontal armor of any Allied tank in service. The gun's highly sloped shield deflected most incoming fire, and its 360-degree traverse meant it could engage threats from any direction. Allied tank crews approaching positions defended by Pak-43s knew they were likely driving to their deaths. The gun could kill at ranges where Allied tanks could barely see their targets, let alone hit them with any accuracy. This standoff capability meant that German gunners could destroy multiple Allied tanks before those tanks could close to effective firing range. The Pak-43 was also mounted on various self-propelled gun platforms, creating mobile tank destroyers that combined the 88's firepower with armored protection and mobility. The Nashorn Ferdinand, and later the Jagdpanther all carried versions of the 88, and all were feared by Allied forces. The Ferdinand, despite early mechanical problems, proved devastatingly effective at the Battle of Kursk in 1943. Reports suggest that 89 Ferdinands destroyed some 200 Soviet tanks during the battle, a kill ratio that speaks to the weapon's effectiveness. The Jagdpanther, which appeared later in the war, combined the Pak-43 with excellent armor protection and good mobility, weighing 46 tons and capable of speeds up to 48 kilometers per HR. The Jagdpanther was a fast-moving tank killer that earned grudging respect from Allied forces on all fronts where it appeared. Though fewer than 425 were produced, each one was a serious threat that required careful tactical planning to counter. What made the 88 particularly terrifying was that Allied forces had no direct equivalent. Both Britain and the United States possessed anti-aircraft guns of similar caliber. The British 94mm and American 90mm guns could fire higher and loft heavier shells than the German 88. On paper, these weapons matched or exceeded the 88's anti-aircraft capabilities. However, both Allied guns were larger, heavier, and less mobile than their German counterpart. More significantly, Allied commanders restricted these weapons to their original anti-aircraft role, never developing the doctrine or equipment necessary to employ them effectively against ground targets. The Germans, by contrast, embraced the 88's versatility, developing specialized ammunition, fire control systems, power rammers, fuse-setting tools, and improved ammunition handling equipment that maximized the weapon's effectiveness in multiple roles. This innovative and flexible approach allowed German forces to adapt the 88 to meet evolving battlefield requirements throughout the war. The 88's reputation was built on a combination of technical excellence and tactical flexibility. The weapon itself was superbly engineered, combining accuracy, range, rate of fire, and destructive power in a relatively mobile package. German crews were extensively trained and developed high levels of proficiency with the weapon. The fire control systems allowed for coordinated fire that maximized effectiveness. The variety of ammunition types meant the gun could be optimized for any target, and perhaps most importantly, German tactical doctrine recognized and exploited the weapon's potential in ways Allied forces never matched with their own heavy guns. The result was a weapon system that inspired genuine terror in those who faced it, whether they were flying through flak-filled skies over Germany or advancing across the battlefields of North Africa, Russia, or Western Europe in tanks that seemed woefully inadequate against the 88's devastating firepower. The legacy of the German 88mm gun extends far beyond its technical specifications or production numbers. It represents a case study in how a weapon system can achieve psychological dominance through a combination of capability, versatility, and effective employment. Allied forces faced many dangerous German weapons during World War II, but few inspired the same visceral fear as the 88. That fear was well-founded, based on bitter experience and countless casualties. The 88 truly earned its reputation as the legendary big gun of the Second World War.